So the EC4 membership is comprised of agency heads. So that's what it is. And the ones listed in the statute are 9, and it says and others, and currently it stands at 12, with the others being included, like the infrastructure bank, that was included. I think WIPT has been included. So there are a few others that have been added in, but it now stands at 12. And because it's executive branch agencies, they don't need to be appointed. The staff is an appointed body.
Right, and those are 3-year terms that roll, so a third of the group cycles out every year.
My thought being staff isn't doing their job, then when it comes time to reappoint them in the Senate, that would be time to go and say they haven't been doing their job, for instance, and push for change.
And I think that they've done work, and it's been important, but then there's this other piece of it. And my read of it is they were responsive to what the council requested of them, rather than examining the legal requirements and saying, what does this also do? So that they don't have staff. And my experience on boards and commissions is that they really do better if there's staff assigned to them that helps them run their agenda and does that sort of thing. This is your question really leads to what is a fix? Now, just hypothetically, probably a minimum staff size is something like 3 or 4 people in the operation. You need one for the general advisory board, one for the staff, somebody to oversee it, and sort of a support. That is something that can be done, if you want to, with relative dispatch in state government, because the director of administration can pull people from one agency and put them into another agency by signing the transfer and doing it. And so you can do it. When I headed OER, I had that kind of people. I needed legal counsel, zip, it was take from DM and given to me. So you can have that happen. So it's not a long-term solution, but if you have priority work that needs to get done, you can do it. Others? Yes?
Yes, what does the legislation that established EC4 say about issuing findings and recommendations? How does that relate to the statutes that created it?
It's very, the one that created it is very explicit. It's contained in the annual report section, and I have it here, I can read it. So,
in case you didn't expect that.
Is the staff meeting regularly?
No,
Were they last
we
meeting?
have not met all fall. I think our last meeting was, do you know when the last meeting was?
there were some in 2017 that didn't have quorum present. The last one that I saw quorum was late in 2016. So, reported, no later than May 1, 2015, and annually thereafter, the council shall issue a report of its findings and recommendations and progress on achieving the purposes of the chapter.
So it's completely not complying, the current board is completely not complying with the statute that created it.
On this particular item,
Yes.
its reports have come out in June, and August, and none yet for 2018,
And with no findings and recommendations.
and without findings and recommendations.
Right. Also, do its reports look at individual subsectors for emissions? Does it look at transportation versus electricity generation versus industry?
That is
what
covered
if-
in the plan,
Well,
but in the
the
annual
answer-
reports, no.
What it more does is describe what state agencies are doing. So if you want to find a marvelous, and it really is marvelous, it's fascinating to look at what state agencies are up to, what they're working on, it contains that. And then it will contain a summary of the governor's lead by example initiative, things like that. It does that, I would say, superbly, and that's valuable to have one place that you can see that provides a comprehensive listing of what state government's been doing. That's not a bad thing, but it's not. You still need findings and recommendations. So it's good, but is it sufficient?
Yes, that's all.
Can I want to give Timmons a chance to answer your question, Steve, about is STAB working? Because you're on that committee, so from your point of view, is
So
STAB working?
what STAB has been asked to do by the EC4 has been reporting on the science of climate change in broad terms, what it means for Rhode Island. So there's a report that we did a couple of years ago, and then it was updated. It was started as a series of PowerPoint slides on sea level rise, temperature change, water temperature change in the bay. I can't remember what those 6 areas. And then that became the introduction to the Resilient Rhody report, which came out this last summer or whatever it was. So in terms of doing something, yes, it's done something, and that is summarizing some of the science on impacts. There's not been a review of what the larger scientific community says is necessary for us to avoid dangerous climate change, or what we'd have to do in our economy to avoid surpassing 1.5 or 2 degrees Celsius of global mean temperature change, which the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has said is sort of the highest levels we want to go before it's going to get really bad. So, for example, in the Paris Agreement, agreed in 2015, right in November, by almost 200 countries, including the United States, said we should seek to stay well below 2 degrees and get as close to 1.5 degrees as possible. And Governor Raimondo put out an executive order 1706 supporting the general goals of the Paris Agreement. However, there's not been really an effort by the EC4 to actually have the state act in conformity with what that part of the Paris Agreement says is necessary. Even the U.S.'s pledge of reducing our emissions by 26 to 28% by 2025 has not been translated into Rhode Island action. So I would say we have not really responded to the spirit or the letter of this legislation, unfortunately.
Just another idea. When we talk about getting the report with recommendations out by May 1st, oftentimes May 1st is very late in the legislative session, and there's no way to get action going on in the last 2 months of the session. So even May 1st would probably be not an optimal time. You'd want to head for aim for February or January even, optimally to get these ideas ready and percolating and working through the various committees.
Yeah.
If you really want to have an impact in the year that these recommendations are made.
What happens is, in the legislative session, is that the revenue estimating conference is the second week in May, usually around May 10th or so. And that's when they know the revenues for the balance of what they were as of the end of the first calendar quarter of the year. And that's the best projection of revenues is at that point in time. Then they get into the hustle to get out mode, and the legislation really starts to flow, because a lot of legislation, anything significant, is effectively held pending budget unless it's emergency in nature. So a May 1 day allows you to influence not what gets introduced, but how things are disposed, what's the fate of them. Most of your sub-A's occur in that May-June period.
By which you mean revisions of introduced legislation?
Introduced. So there is a logic for a May 1 date. Is it as good as earlier and for the formation of legislation? Absolutely not. But you'd say there's a logic for it. If it comes out at the end of June or in August, it has almost no impact. And I think that that's we need to really use having the report be impactful if we want to move beyond business as usual.
Can you reflect on, is there a legal recourse for civil society if state agencies are not meeting the ordinance?
In theory, yes, but as a practical matter, it's so tortuous that it's like trying to do mountain climbing barefoot. I mean, you can do it, but nobody chooses to.
So no yellow vests in downtown Providence?
I mean,
Yeah.
Not yet.
anyway, so I think that's why, for example, CLF is what's in its version of the Local Warming Solutions Act to have a right of action for compelled state agencies written into it. And so that's the kind of safeguard CLF says is that within a clear path. So we have an entity that's out there that's done good work, but not everything that could be done. We need more work to be done going forward, and what makes this assessment timely is that it arrives before the session when it can help influence what gets drafted, and that is in fact intentional.
You both probably have the governor's ear from time to time. What is she or her people telling you why they're resisting change? Either having substantive legislation that passes or having EC4 having more teeth. What are you hearing?
I have not spoken to the governor at all. I certainly speak with Janet White and Carol Grant frequently. And I would say that what we have is a system of institutional inertia. And that and just getting through the day regarding their responsibilities is substantial. That OER stretches hard to get the existing energy agendas implemented and deserves enormous credit for that. But the big issues like the transportation sector remain an enormous question mark. So that the Rhode Island has a series of statutes, as you all know, that there's great marks in the electrical sector, right? That's American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, Union of Concerned Scientists. Well, say Rhode Island does, compared with other states, a very good job. So we're trying to do more of that very good job, and that's labor intensive, and it's worth doing. But the two big things that are out there, which are transportation and solar and thermal energy in buildings, are almost business as usual. Not quite, but almost. And so that, and And that's why what we really are suggesting is that we have to upgrade the efforts. And that's for us on the civic side to say, let's upgrade. Political life in Rhode Island is often public opinion following rather than public opinion leading. And that's why it's very important for people who are concerned about these issues to understand them and to do things, because that is what then creates momentum for making the big changes that are called for.
Just to follow up to say, we've had these two major scientific assessments come out this fall from the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change Special Report on 1.5 degrees, saying that we are way off track, that we've got to totally get ourselves off fossil fuel in the next 15 or 20 years. And then there's the National Climate Assessment that said basically, as somebody summed it up, that the status quo, that is, chiseling on the edges, is a suicide machine. That is, the status quo is a suicide machine. If we continue to make these incremental changes, that we are dooming ourselves as a society, as a species. So I think, we've seen a new movement, this Sunrise movement of young people. Young people are just unwilling to accept this, the status quo as an answer. And so we have to do better. And I think that's our role here, is to say, we want to help the state move away from the status quo, to think bigger. I think, I haven't spoken directly with the governor in a long time, but with her, upper staff, I hear things like, we need to be incremental, we need to live within the politics of the possible. And I think that, it's a suicide machine for us to take that approach. We need bold solutions, and not only that, the bold solutions are shown to be beneficial to the state. It can create vast numbers of jobs. These are, basic jobs in weatherizing homes with caulking guns and blowing insulation. This is, going up and down the streets of Olneyville with, with an insulation truck. It's, converting to electric vehicles, installing chargers, and incentivizing people to make the switch a little bit sooner. Retrofitting our infrastructure. It's dealing with our sea level rise and so on. There's a lot of things that are going to that could create a much more equitable and prosperous Rhode Island. And it's just unfortunate. There is this politics of the General Assembly and in the Senate that are quite difficult. But I think some real leadership could break through on this.
Just a quick point on OER, they're actually at the EFSB every time I'm there to advocate for the Affordable Power Plant. So, they may be doing a good job, but they're certainly not on that issue, on the new side of that, and they're pushing for it, not against it, nor they. So, just want to put that out there. OER's probably not doing the job they should be doing.
Yeah, I think it's got a mixed portfolio. It's doing some of these very good energy efficiency programs and some renewables things. They're making happen. They're trying to help make happen the governor's goal of 1,000 megawatts of renewables by 2020, which was quite ambitious, very ambitious. But then there's this other side of facilitating natural gas infrastructure, which I guess they see as necessary for affordable and reliable energy in the state, but which there's quite a lot of evidence refuting the necessity of it. So it's a mixed bag.
Timmons, you've done some work recently, obvious and other people that have been resisting change on this front at the State House. So who nationally and locally is preventing some of this legislation going forward?
Right. So there are a number of actors. We did an analysis of 49 pieces of legislation introduced from 2012 to 2017.